One of the most striking differences between humans and our closest relatives, great apes, is the apparent lack of body hair. Modern humans appear smooth, hairless, and distinct from our shaggy ancestors. But the reality is far more complex and more surprising. From a biological perspective, we have not truly lost our hair. On average, the human body contains just as many hair follicles as a chimpanzee. The difference lies not in the presence of hair, but in its visibility. Human body hair has evolved to be shorter, finer, and lighter, rendering it nearly invisible to the naked eye. This change did not happen overnight. It is the result of a long evolutionary process that favored individuals whose hair traits conferred specific advantages in their environment. Our ancestors, millions of years ago, were likely covered in thick, insulating fur, much like today's primates. That coat served a clear purpose: protection from the elements, including sun, wind, and biting insects. But at some point, something shifted. The transformation from fur-covered hominin to the nearly hairless Homo sapiens was not cosmetic. It was functional and vital to survival. Understanding why we look the way we do requires going back to the earliest stages of human evolution. It means examining how changes in climate, behavior, and physiology began to reshape the human body. It also means accepting a paradox. We are among the hairiest primates by follicle count, yet among the least visibly hairy by appearance. This is not a story about losing something. It is about transformation, about how evolution didn't erase our hair, but reprogrammed it, and about how that change, seemingly minor, helped unlock the potential of one of Earth's most successful species. In this episode, we trace the hidden history of human hair, from the dense fur of our distant ancestors to the almost invisible strands that still cover us today. What we find is not just a tale of biology, but a key to understanding how we became human. Part 2, Fetal Hair, Traces of an Ancient Past. At around the 5th or 6th month of development, a human fetus undergoes a remarkable transformation. Its body becomes covered in a fine, soft layer of hair known as lanugo. This hair serves a clear biological purpose. It helps to hold in place a protective coating called vernix caseosa, a waxy, white substance that covers the fetus's skin. The vernix shields the skin from constant exposure to amniotic fluid, preventing it from becoming chapped or waterlogged. At the same time, it provides lubrication that eases the birthing process, allowing the baby to pass more smoothly through the birth canal. Lanugo is not permanent. It usually begins to shed shortly before birth, although in some cases, traces of it may remain for a few days after delivery. But its appearance during fetal development is a telling clue, a silent witness to our evolutionary history. Lanugo is not unique to humans. It is also found in other mammals, particularly those born in a less developed or vulnerable state. The presence of lanugo in our own species points to a time when body hair played a far greater role in our biology. In this way, the fetus replays an ancient script. For a brief moment, every human being carries the legacy of a fur-covered past. And though the lanugo disappears, it leaves behind a message. That hair was once not just an ornament or leftover trait, but an essential feature of survival. What we see in the womb is not merely developmental biology. It is evolutionary memory, etched into the very structure of our growth. Before we are born, before we speak or walk, our bodies remind us where we came from. Part 3, Racing the Heat, the hidden weapon of endurance. Humans are not stronger than lions. We are not faster than antelopes. By every conventional measure of physical prowess, our early ancestors should have been outmatched by the predators and prey around them. And yet, we endured, and we thrived. The secret lies in an unexpected physiological adaptation: sweating. Among mammals, humans are unparalleled in the ability to cool their bodies through perspiration. This mechanism, combined with our nearly hairless skin, transformed our ancestors into something few predators could match: persistent hunters. While most animals must stop to pant or rest after a burst of speed, humans could keep going. Without thick fur trapping body heat, and with millions of sweat glands working across exposed skin, we could regulate our internal temperature during extended exertion, even under the blazing sun. This made possible a remarkable hunting strategy: persistence hunting. Rather than ambushing or sprinting after prey, early humans tracked animals for hours, sometimes even days. As the animal fled, it would overheat. Panting only works when the animal is resting. The longer the chase, the more heat built up. Eventually, the prey would collapse, not from wounds, but from heat exhaustion. In this context, hairlessness was not a cosmetic quirk. It was a tool, a survival advantage. While predators relied on strength and speed, early humans bet everything on endurance and won. The ability to run for hours in the heat of the day redefined our role in the ecosystem. It changed the way we hunted, the food we ate, and the environments we could inhabit. In evolutionary terms, it was revolutionary. Hair did not disappear for aesthetic reasons. It was sacrificed for thermoregulation. The price was exposure to the elements. The reward was access to a hunting niche no other species could occupy. And that reward may have been the first major step on the path to becoming human. Part 4. 2 legs and the shadow of the sun. Standing upright did more than free our hands. It changed the way we absorbed sunlight and the way we survived heat. Bipedalism, the act of walking on 2 legs, reduced the body's surface area exposed to direct solar radiation. When the sun stands high in the sky, as it does during the midday heat, a vertical posture minimizes the impact. Instead of the full back or head being exposed, only the narrow top of the skull receives the sun's direct rays. But the advantages go further. When combined with bare skin and an advanced sweating mechanism, upright posture becomes an engine of thermoregulation. In quadrupeds covered with fur, sweat, if produced at all, struggles to evaporate efficiently. The moisture is trapped between skin and hair, limiting its cooling effect. In humans, however, sweat evaporates directly from the skin's surface. This process draws heat away from the body, allowing internal temperatures to remain stable even in extreme environments. And because we stand tall, we benefit from greater airflow. More of the body is exposed to wind, further enhancing the cooling process. In essence, the human form became a walking radiator, designed not for bursts of power, but for long, steady movement under the sun. This physical configuration had profound evolutionary consequences. It enabled our ancestors to be active during times when other predators rested in the shade. It allowed humans to forage, travel, and hunt across open savannas without succumbing to heat stroke. The loss of body hair and the adoption of upright walking were not isolated traits. They worked together as part of a broader adaptive system, one that redefined what it meant to be a mammal under the African sun. 2 legs, smooth skin, and the ability to sweat. This unlikely combination set us on a path no other primate followed. It was not just evolution of posture, it was evolution of performance. Part 5. Homo habilis, the turning point for human hair. Roughly 2.4 million years ago, a new species emerged in Africa, Homo habilis, or handyman. Though smaller and more primitive than modern humans, this early hominin marked a critical shift in both behavior and biology. Homo habilis was among the first to use simple, stone tools, sharp flakes, and crude choppers to cut meat, break bones, and access marrow. But this technological leap came with new evolutionary pressures. These early humans weren't always hunting large animals themselves. More often, they were scavenging, racing to a carcass before predators or other scavengers could strip it clean. In this race, speed and heat resistance became survival traits. The African savanna offered little shade. Scavenging meant moving fast and far under intense sun. Individuals who could tolerate heat Those with fewer insulating body hairs and more effective cooling systems had the advantage. They reached the meat first. They survived. They passed on their genes. Over generations, this translated into visible changes: thinner hair, smoother skin, more sweat glands. The traits that once made primates warm and protected in the forest now became liabilities in the open plains. In this context, hairlessness became adaptive, a trait linked not just to temperature regulation, but to access to nutrition and social dominance. Homo habilis didn't know it, but their evolutionary path was already diverging from other hominins. Tool use, scavenging behavior, and hair reduction weren't isolated developments. They were parts of the same adaptive puzzle, each reinforcing the other. It was here, on the savanna, that body hair began to fade, not by chance, but by necessity. Not as decoration, but as a biological response to a new way of surviving. This was not just evolution in motion. It was the beginning of a new kind of human. Art 6. Black-white, the skin that tells an ancient story. When body hair diminished, skin became our first line of defense. No longer shielded by fur, early humans in Africa faced direct exposure to the sun's ultraviolet radiation, and nature responded with pigment. As Homo sapiens evolved under the equatorial sun, they developed higher concentrations of melanin in their skin. This dark pigment served a vital role. It absorbed and deflected UV rays, protecting against cellular damage, skin cancer, and the breakdown of folate, a nutrient critical for fetal development. Dark skin was not aesthetic. It was adaptive, an evolutionary shield forged by sunlight and necessity. But this wasn't the end of the story. Thousands of years later, as human populations began to migrate northward into colder, cloudier regions of Eurasia, the sun's intensity weakened. In these latitudes, melanin-rich skin posed a new problem. It blocked too much UVB, the very radiation needed to synthesize vitamin D in the body. Gradually, natural selection favored individuals with lighter skin that allowed more UVB to penetrate and generate sufficient vitamin D in low-light environments. Over time, skin pigmentation lightened, giving rise to the diverse range of skin tones seen in the world today. This transformation did not unfold in a single step. It was shaped by geography, climate, diet, and time. Today, the color of our skin is not a marker of division. It's a living record of where our ancestors once stood under the sun. A record of how they survived, adapted, and passed their genes forward. In this light, melanin is more than pigment. It's a map, a memory, a biological story written on the surface of the human body. One that began the moment we stepped out from under our own fur. Part 7. The others kept their fur. But why? If losing body hair was such an advantage, why didn't other animals follow the same path? Many species that inhabit the same environments as early humans, cheetahs, antelopes, zebras, remain fully covered in fur. They run fast, endure heat, and survive under the same sun, yet their evolutionary path never included shedding their coats. The answer lies in different strategies for cooling. Unlike humans, most quadrupeds rely on specialized adaptations to regulate brain temperature. Some antelopes, for instance, possess dense networks of blood vessels in their heads that function as internal cooling systems. As body temperature rises during a chase, cooler blood is routed to the brain, protecting it from overheating, even if the rest of the body grows hot. Carnivores like big cats avoid overheating by timing. They hunt primarily during twilight or nighttime, when ambient temperatures are lower. They don't need to sweat or run for hours. They rely on short bursts of speed and ambush tactics. But among large mammals, we do see parallels to human hairlessness. Elephants, rhinoceroses, and hippopotamuses have sparse or no body hair. Their massive size makes them vulnerable to heat retention, and thick fur would trap more warmth than they could afford. In their case, hairlessness is a heat management necessity. Some of these animals, like hippos, also spend extensive time in water. Aquatic behavior may have reinforced the loss of body hair, another clue echoed in controversial human evolution theories. So while other species didn't abandon fur, they didn't need to. Their bodies evolved different solutions to the same problem. Ours took a unique route: skin exposed, sweat flowing, and heat evaporating off bare flesh. What looks like a loss is, in truth, a specialization. And our smooth skin is not a deviation, it's a design. Part 8. The Aquatic Ape Hypothesis, a controversial evolutionary detour among the many theories that attempt to explain why humans lost their body hair. Few are as bold or as divisive as the Aquatic Ape Hypothesis. This theory proposes that at some point in our evolutionary past, human ancestors lived a semi-aquatic lifestyle. According to its proponents, a combination of shoreline foraging, wading, and even swimming may have shaped both our physiology and behavior. From this perspective, body hair became a liability. In water, fur creates drag and traps moisture, hindering mobility and causing loss of body heat. Hairlessness, on the other hand, streamlines movement and allows water to run off the skin easily. It's no coincidence, they argue, that other largely hairless mammals, like dolphins, whales, and hippos, also adapted to aquatic life. And what about the hair we retained? The theory points to scalp hair as a functional remnant, providing protection against solar radiation when the rest of the body was submerged. Upright wading posture, visible in modern humans, is also cited as a behavioral echo of this supposed aquatic phase. Supporters highlight other human traits that align with aquatic adaptations: our voluntary breath control, high subcutaneous fat, and affinity for water compared to other primates. But for all its intrigue, the aquatic ape hypothesis remains outside the mainstream. Most paleoanthropologists consider the fossil and genetic evidence insufficient. There is no clear archaeological record supporting a sustained aquatic phase in early hominins. Critics argue that simpler, land-based explanations, thermoregulation, endurance hunting, sexual selection, account for hair loss more directly and with stronger empirical support. Still, the aquatic ape theory persists, not because it has been proven, but because it challenges conventional thinking. It forces us to ask, what if human evolution took a path no one expected? What if the smoothness of our skin hints at a forgotten shoreline in our ancient past? Speculative or not, the theory endures because human origins, like the ocean, are deeper than they seem. Part 9. Love and hair, the power of sexual selection. Not all evolutionary change is driven by climate, diet, or survival. Some of it begins with a glance and a preference. Among the many forces that may have shaped human hairlessness, sexual selection stands out as one of the most subtle and powerful. The idea is simple. If certain physical traits are consistently found attractive, those traits become more common across generations, not because they help the body survive, but because they help the individual reproduce. Hair, or the lack of it, may have played directly into this dynamic. In many mammal species, infants with sparse, fine hair appear more vulnerable and elicit stronger caregiving responses. The same instinct may have influenced early human attraction. Individuals, particularly females with smoother, less hairy skin, may have appeared more youthful, more delicate, more desirable. This aesthetic bias could have led to a preference for hairless partners, especially among males. Over time, as these preferences influenced mating patterns, genes associated with finer, less visible body hair would have spread through the population. What began as an instinctive response to childlike features may have snowballed into a powerful driver of appearance. And unlike natural selection, which favors traits that help organisms survive, sexual selection often exaggerates traits purely for attraction. peacock feathers, deer antlers, or in our case, smooth skin. Interestingly, the trend would not be limited to women. As preferences took hold, both sexes likely evolved in response to each other's gaze. Male and female bodies alike were shaped not just by environment or predation, but by the psychology of attraction. Today, cultural ideals around body hair continue to shift, but beneath these surface trends lies a much deeper story, one of mate choice, social signaling, and evolutionary momentum. Hairlessness may not have been required for survival, but if it made one more likely to find a mate, it was enough. Evolution doesn't always follow logic. Sometimes it follows longing. Art 10, Shelter and Parasites, a practical reason to lose hair. As humans began to settle, the rules of survival changed. No longer constantly on the move, our ancestors started spending prolonged periods in shelters, caves, huts, or primitive dwellings. And with this shift came a new problem: parasites. Fleas, lice, mites, and ticks, these blood-feeding insects thrive in enclosed spaces. Unlike open environments, fixed shelters provided stable conditions for infestation and reproduction. For early humans, this created a different kind of evolutionary pressure: how to avoid disease and discomfort in increasingly crowded, insect-prone living conditions. The solution wasn't a tool or a weapon, it was skin. A body with less hair made it easier to detect parasites, scratch them off, or remove them manually. It reduced the number of places insects could hide and feed. In a world without soap, clothing, or pesticides, smooth skin was more than a cosmetic trait. It was a defense mechanism. But the consequences didn't stop at hygiene. In the context of mate selection, a hairless body may have served as a visible signal of health. Fewer parasites meant fewer infections. Smooth skin implied cleanliness, vitality, and strength, qualities that appealed to potential partners. Over time, this preference could reinforce the trend toward hairlessness. Individuals with less body hair may have faced fewer infestations, suffered less illness, and appeared more attractive to others. The trait spread not by brute force, but by practical advantage and reproductive opportunity. In this view, hair loss wasn't just about heat or beauty. It was a strategic response to the realities of communal living and biological threat. Evolution, after all, adapts not only to climate and predators, but to pests, pathogens, and the spaces we choose to call home. Part 11. What remains? The modern meaning of human hair. Though much of our body hair has receded into near invisibility, what remains still tells an evolutionary story. The few patches we retain on the scalp, face, armpits, and groin are not leftovers. They are functional, strategic, and possibly ancient in meaning. Scalp hair, for instance, plays a protective role. It shields the brain from solar radiation and cushions the skull against minor impacts. In environments where early humans moved under intense sunlight, this natural covering was vital, not for the body, but for the organ that set us apart, the brain. Facial hair, especially in males, beards, mustaches, and sideburns may serve more than aesthetic purposes. Anthropologists suggest they signal sexual maturity, gender identity, or social dominance. In many primate species, visual traits like size, color, or mane serve as status displays. For early human groups, a thick beard might have conveyed authority, age, or strength without a word spoken. Eyebrows help keep sweat from dripping into the eyes. Eyelashes shield against dust, wind, and bright light. Their placement is precise, their function critical. These small features protect one of our most important tools: vision. Axillary, armpit, and pubic hair perform a different task. These areas contain apocrine sweat glands that release oily secretions rich in pheromones, chemical signals involved in attraction and mate selection. Hair in these zones helps trap and disperse scent, possibly enhancing communication of reproductive fitness. Taken together, these features suggest that our remaining body hair is not random. It reflects a complex blend of utility, communication, and evolutionary heritage. Even today, the presence or absence of body hair influences how we are perceived, by others, and by ourselves. Across cultures, it's shaped norms of grooming, identity, and beauty. What we lost helped us survive. What we kept may still help us connect, compete, and communicate. In every strand that remains, a trace of ancient purpose still lingers, silent but not forgotten. Part 12. The legacy of bare skin and the future of the human body. If we had not lost our body hair, we might never have claimed our current place in the food chain. Smooth skin was not a cosmetic quirk, it was a strategic breakthrough. It enabled our ancestors to outlast prey, regulate body heat, detect parasites, and signal health and vitality. The disappearance of fur was not a loss, it was an adaptation. And like all evolutionary changes, it came with trade-offs: vulnerable skin, exposure to the elements, and new challenges of protection. But it also came with remarkable benefits that helped define us as a species. Hairlessness, combined with bipedalism and sweat-based thermoregulation, reshaped what the human body could do. It redefined how we hunted, traveled, and lived together. It supported the expansion of our brains and the growth of social complexity. It allowed us to master fire, construct shelter, and spread across the globe. In short, bare skin helped build civilization. But evolution does not stop. The same forces that once favored hairlessness may still be at work today, or be replaced by new pressures entirely. In an age of controlled climates, synthetic clothing, and advanced hygiene, many of the survival functions once performed by hair have become obsolete. We now protect ourselves not with fur, but with fabric and technology. The sun is blocked by glass and sunscreen. Parasites are repelled by medicine and sanitation. So what comes next? Will future humans evolve even smoother skin? Will eyebrows shrink as artificial lighting renders glare protection unnecessary? Will beards disappear as their social signaling fades in a digital world? Or, perhaps more likely, will culture overtake biology? With genetic engineering and medical enhancement, the human body may soon evolve not by natural selection, but by conscious design. Yet even in that future, the story of our skin remains relevant, because it's a reminder that evolution is not always about strength or intelligence, but about adaptation, about responding to the environment with ingenuity, flexibility, and resilience. The legacy of our bare skin is not just written in biology, it's written in behavior, innovation, and survival. And its next chapter has yet to be told.